I was reading an article about a guy who was a speed memorizer. So he would memorize decks of cards and see how fast he could memorize them. There's this whole world of memorization competitions. He kept making progress and getting faster and faster and faster at memorizing a deck of cards, but he reached a plateau. He asked some advice from a professional stenographer, a typist, right? And the advice was, you've got to start making mistakes, because if you're not making mistakes, you're obviously not going fast enough. You have to push yourself past the point where you're comfortable and which you're 100%, start making mistakes, and then eventually the accuracy will come. Hey everyone, welcome to the Anarchy Podcast. 99% of traders will never make consistent profits. So why listen to the 99% of advice? On this show, we're going to challenge some of the most hallowed and repeated tenets of trading, and in doing so, set you up to succeed where others fail. Spoiler alert, we don't have a secret strategy or magic wand that will let you skip out on the hard work of learning the markets, but we can debunk viewpoints that are holding you back. If that sounds good to you, come join us. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Anarchy Trading Podcast. Let me paint you a picture. You've been trading for a year or two. You've jumped around a few strategies. You've been losing money left and right. And then, like a gift from the heavens, you finally arrive on an indicator, a concept. You find somebody online who you copy. And boom, all of a sudden you go from a losing trader to being break even. And you feel like you've made a ton of progress. And you feel like you're on the cusp of becoming profitable, only to struggle month after month and just remaining at break even. Well, today we're here to discuss just that scenario, why that might be worse than actually losing money, and then how you can fix it, how you can push past this break even stage. Jordan, how you doing?
Doing well, Levi. Thank you for that intro. And in fact, it's actually a cycle, right? You'll go from losing. You go to break even for a while, struggle. Finally, you go, oh, I'm still breaking even. So then you start losing again, because then you go try to find another strategy. And then you finally
Right.
find one, and then you're at break even. So it's actually a cycle that continues on and on. And we've seen this in many traders. And the vast majority of traders, 95% or so, will never leave that cycle. And yeah, it's something I really wanted to talk about today, especially because as I start coaching more people and I see a lot more people online and I'm involved more in this space, I see people constantly chasing this and celebrating, I'm at break even. And unfortunately, and it's a bit of a controversial subject, but I would say the vast majority of the time, break even is nothing to celebrate. And if you're at break even for any period of time, you actually need to be scared, because break even is the default of the market. It is the accumulation of random chance. You flip a coin over 100 times, that coin is going to land approximately 50% on heads and 50% on tails. And so break even in your trading simply indicates random chance. And so today, what we wanted to discuss a little bit is just about, okay, what leads people to this break-even state, then how to identify whether you're kind of in that state, and finally, how do you get out of it and avoid or break this cycle of craziness of going from losing to break even to losing to break even. So the first point I want to make here is the reason most people go start hitting break even is because they have found something that completely mechanicalizes their trading. By the way, if you have any topics that you'd like to hear us to discuss, feel free to drop us a DM on Twitter, X, or you can send us an email at contact@anarchytrading.com. We'd love to hear what you'd like us to discuss, and we'll try to put that into a future episode here after the new year. But back to what I was discussing about trading. The fact is that many times the reason people go from losing to break even is because they completely mechanicalized their trading. Essentially, it could be done by a computer. If it can be done by a computer, you remove your brain. And the data shows that computerized trading just doesn't work. It may work in the short term because, let's be honest, in back testing, you can create a strategy that is extremely successful, and this is a bit of a tangent, but it is important because in people's search to become better traders, they start exploring, well, if I can just remove my emotions from it, if I can remove my brain from it, then that means then I can start making money because my emotions, my psychology is what's keeping me or making me a losing trader, which is true. Your psychology is mostly what's making you a losing trader, but removing your emotions and your brain, it's also your most powerful tool. It what makes you able to become a successful trader. So removing yourself from that essentially creates randomness because a mechanicalized system doesn't work. Otherwise, there would be billionaires who use these mechanicalized systems, and they don't exist. And so that is why people, they get this new, essentially new electronic computerized trading system, and they log in and they set it up trading, and they're like, hey, I'm at break even for the first time in my trading career. This is great. But guess what? It's because they're just flipping a coin, or worse, but they're just flipping a coin. Because again, we've said Levi and I have actually made indicators that if you built like a trading system off this indicator, you get an 80% return over the course of this last year. And it's based off of astrological moon symbols, right? It's based off of your astrology symbols. It's based off of your birthday and the phases of the moon. And guess what? That stinking indicator, I can back test it
It
and it has
works. It's
80%
awesome.
effectiveness. It works
That's the
great.
thing. Like you could go and you could literally sell that to somebody, to a new trader. And this is what they do, right? The problem with indicators, go watch it's one of our first episodes, called, it's something like indicators, why indicators don't work, or why indicators are mostly useless. It's because you can, like you said, that they're prone to being overfitted to the data, the past data. And so they're really good in the short term, or they're really good, in back testing, but they're essentially meaningless. And so, yeah, Jordan created one that, yeah, you could sell to somebody because you go, hey, look at this. It's amazing, 80% returns, and then you find out it's based off of your your astrological sign. You said something earlier, Jordan, that I just kind of wanted to just talk on and go back to. Like, I love your point that, and a lot of newer traders don't understand this. Break even it's the default, right? Like that is, if you had no idea, if you had just someone to randomly take trades, right? Just randomly take trades. They're not good, they're not bad. They just, take longs, take shorts. It would eventually just break even, other than, commissions and stuff like that. So yeah, I think a lot of people underestimate the power of non-randomness. Like when you're a new trader, you're not random, which is actually kind of good. Like, I mean, yeah, it's the opposite of good, but like at least you can learn something, right? Like if you were if you were a good trader, you could watch a losing trader. Like put a losing trader in front of a computer and then just take all the opposite of what they do. And
Which is what a lot of brokers do.
Yeah. It's a dishonest thing that brokers overseas do. Like American brokers, at least, and kind of Western brokers, most they make sure you can't do that. But like they're shady brokers, yeah, they'll find out how new of a trader you are, and then they will literally bet against you because they know that a bad trader is better at being bad than a good trader is better at being good, which is crazy.
Trader is a good trader, as in you just do the opposite. Even, I mean, Levi and I have actually talked about this. We've talked about getting our dad a trading account and then just using a copy trader to take the opposite trades, and we'd probably actually be pretty lucrative for a while.
Well, so I've said this before, right? I've told the story that when I first started trading with real money, I lost 30 trades in a row. Well, if you're a good trader and you win 30 trades, and by the way, I was doing a 1-to-1 or one, like that, the chances of that are insane. Like if you were a good trader and you won 30 trades in a row, you'd be so insanely good. And that's because, again, losing is non-random. And so your point being, like, good breaking even is not as good as you think it is. And so people can get into this trap where they randomize their trading by buying an indicator, or by just they mechanize their trading to a point where it's, it's A plus B equals take trade. And they do that. And then they've randomized their trade and they break even and they go, yay, I made progress. And they didn't. Like now the terrible part is they can't go back without losing again. And they can't go forward because they're actually not getting better. You're not getting better just randomizing your trading. Hey everyone, Levi here to quickly ask if you're finding value in the podcast. We would love it if you'd take a moment to follow the show and leave a review. It helps us out a lot and enables us to bring you the best possible content. Thanks for being part of the community. We love you guys.
So break even is not always a bad thing. And when is it not a bad thing? Because it sounds like we're kind of bashing on the fact that if you're break even, then you're doing something wrong. Not always the case. So let's say you've been losing a lot. You have a strategy in place. You have your rules that you're now following in place. You were losing. And now you're really following your rules. You're really following your risk management. You're following all these things. You're trading at the same time every day. You're trading the same pair. You're doing everything that we've talked about on this podcast. Well, if you're doing that and now you start seeing your win, let's say you were winning 30% of trades and now you see you're winning 40% of your trades. And now you see you're winning 45% of your trades. Okay, now you're at near break even. You are improving, right? Because this is not you jumping to a strategy and suddenly you're at break even. You're like, oh, I've gotten better. I've found the key. No, this is actually, you have actually improved because you can tangibly see the progress you've made on your strategy using your techniques and following your rules. That is a good thing.
Yeah, and you've been training your brain, those kind of the implicit learning that you've been training kind of that subconscious part of your brain to be better.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And so once you get around break even, that is great. But, and I say this from experience and from people that I've talked to, I wouldn't want to see you stay at break even for 6 months, because if you're staying at break even, it means somehow now you've added randomness back into your trading strategy, and you need to go back and look at your journal and see what's going on. So if you see a gradual increase to break even and then passing break even to becoming profitable, that's great. But if you're a losing trader, and then you trade and then you hit break even, but you've been now at break even for 4-5 months. Again, math doesn't lie. If you're break even for 4 or 5 months, it now means that you've somehow randomized your trading, even though you didn't mean to purposely, and even though you're not using some mechanical, indicator or you're doing anything magic. It means that somehow the math doesn't lie. You have now randomized your trading because you've been break even for 4 or 5 months, and you need to take a step back, look at your journal, and find out what you're doing, because being at break even for a while is fine. But as Levi said, I would much rather see you be a consistently losing trader or a consistently winning trader than being break even all the time, because it's the default of the market.
Yeah, it's funny. It's interesting that, like, losing again. I think randomness is the enemy here, right? You don't want to just be fully random, and there's a power to non-randomness, even if you're losing, because now there's at least something to work with, right? And like you said, there's obviously going to be a point at which you're losing, and you're going to get better and better and better. At some point, you're going to cross the break-even line, right? Where you've been training your subconscious, you've been kind of diving into that deep implicit learning and training your brain. And you're going to you're going to cross that break-even line where you're not really losing, but you should start moving past that. And if you're stuck there, then that means you're kind of in a bad place. There's an interesting thing. I think a lot of people are really afraid of losing, and that's why they get stuck in these kind of break-even strategies and mechanized strategies where there's not really any winning, there's not any losing, because they're afraid of the losses. And so there's a great technique whenever you're trying to learn something and get better at something. This is true for pretty much anything, but there's a specific story. Like I was reading an article about a guy who was a speed memorizer. So he would memorize like decks of cards and see how fast he could memorize them. There's this whole world of memorization like competitions, crazy stuff. Anyway, the point is to get down your time, he kept making progress and getting faster and faster and faster at memorizing a deck of cards. I mean, we're talking down to seconds. Like, it's crazy how fast these guys get. But he reached a plateau, couldn't get past it. And he would always get the cards right. He would never mess up what cards, but he couldn't get any faster. And he asked some advice from a professional stenographer, a typist, right? And it was like, and the advice was, you've got to start making mistakes. Because if you're not making mistakes, you're obviously not going fast enough. Like, you have to push yourself past the point where you're comfortable and which you're 100%, start making mistakes. And then eventually the accuracy will come. There's kind of an interesting, I don't know, parallel that I see here. I think a lot of people get really comfortable at a specific spot and they stop and they plateau because they don't want to fail. And to fail and to lose is to learn. And if you're not learning anything at breaking even, you're just stuck. And I think a lot of people get stuck there because they're afraid to kind of take the hit.
Anyone who has gone from a losing trader to a winning trader, during that break-even phase, there's definitely, and I speak from experience, there's definitely psychological impact where you suddenly start, you're so used to losing for the first 2, 3, 4 years of trading that you essentially eventually become somewhat numb to it. But then as soon as you get to that point where you're break even, you start winning, you're like, you suddenly start getting those fears again that you had gotten over a long time ago about losing. You start going, I'm at break even. I don't want to blow my account again. You know, and it's like, I don't want to take that trade. And so you have to essentially, when you're a beginner trader, you eventually desensitize yourself to losing. It happens after the course of 1 or 2 years. But then as soon as you become a break even trader, guess what? You have to desensitize yourself to losing again. You nailed it right on the head.
Pain comes back,
the pain comes back because now you'll see your account go positive, and instead of always being negative and you just know you're going to lose it, you're like, oh, I could actually make some money this time. And you go, oh, I don't want to lose. Or then you get afraid, or then you move your stop loss, and you have to do it all over again. And so again, it's a process. You're constantly going to be dealing with the psychology and the fears and the feelings of trading as you go throughout this whole process. So it's a never ending cycle that you'll constantly be going through.